Hey, what's up everybody? It is Kellen here from Start Your Systems, and welcome back to MXGP Pro, where today we're going to be doing a little bit of time trial action at the MXGP of Russia track in Orleanic. Playing here as Jeffrey Hurlings, as Mr. Hurlings has just made his return to racing, and we'll get into that in a moment. But again, if you're new to these videos, basically what we're going to be doing is recapping the MXGP of Russia that just happened over the weekend IRL, and talking about what happened, what's been going down, and kind of the biggest storylines to follow in the GP series so that you guys can get up to date in case you missed it. So again, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it already, I'm going to talk about the GP, and we're going to get started with that right about meow. So start off with Hurlings, because obviously that's kind of been the biggest news that's circulated up until the GP, was Hurlings' return to racing. Took 4 or 5 months in total by the time he got back onto a racetrack to recover from that broken foot. Was a little bit longer than expected. It seems like going back in and getting x-rays on it, it wasn't healing as properly as they had hoped. Eventually got it good enough to race in the Dutch Masters and then the ADAC Germany Championship a couple times before actually stepping in on a GP. Never actually won one of those races, but I think he felt confident enough that he could get the ball rolling and get back out onto the racetrack. So he tried his hand here in Russia, and it went pretty well. I think in everyone's mind, you just assume automatically that if it's Hurlings, he should be going 1-1, but when you come off an injury like that, it's a little tough to get back in the swing of things, especially when these guys have already been racing for several months and seem like they've gotten a little bit more comfortable with it. So yeah, maybe Hurlings wasn't like fully 100% ready or prepared for this exact moment, but still ended up having a pretty decent day. He went 4.8 or 4.7, I think it was, for 4th overall. So clearly, second moto a little bit worse. I think that, fitness-wise, he's not all there, which would make sense because he probably couldn't get any impact training done in, and just a little bit of cycling here and there. But even that was probably a tough one. So fitness-wise, maybe not there just yet, but speed-wise, he's still clearly very fast, and I'm sure that it won't be very long before he's back up front. And at this point, playing spoiler in what is turning out to be an immensely interesting championship in the MXGP Championship Series. You kind of, without Hurlings here this year, it was pretty much just a foregone conclusion. Antonio Cairoli was going to be the guy to beat, and at the beginning of the year, that was 100% the most accurate statement. He had maybe the best beginning of his season that he's ever had in his career, did Cairoli. And honestly, things were going pretty decent for him up until the French GP, 1 round to go, when, he got beat straight up by Tim in the first moto, but, settled in, things were fine. He saw over a 30-point lead in the championship. And then the second moto was just a big old blah, like terrible, hit the gate, stalled out, crashed a couple times, ended up 17th, and brought that points lead down to only 10 going into Russia this weekend. Then he followed it up with a terrible first moto. Like, I don't know what was so off with him. The only thing that you can point to was he had a pretty big off on Saturday in qualifying. But, he himself confirmed, and everybody around him confirmed that the bike was just too damaged, and he could not continue in the qualifying race. That's why he didn't finish it. So yes, he had an outside gate pick. It wasn't ideal, but normally speaking, Cairoli is a little bit better than what he showed this weekend. Only was able to go 12th in the first moto. Second moto, turned it around, was able to get a 4th. It seemed like he kind of found, a little bit more of his groove. He obviously probably got a better start, so that would have helped his cause. But, it's such a weird change in momentum in the championship that almost seems like it was perfect timing for Hurlings to come back, because now Cairoli kind of needs some help. He needs someone to get in the mix, and if he can start winning races again and have Hurlings right there to block and be second place guy, not that that's what's going to happen, but at least until Hurlings gets fully back to health, if Cairoli can start winning races again, that would be a huge help to have Hurlings in the mix. Is that going to happen? I don't know, because suddenly Antonio Cairoli doesn't look as steady and steadfast as he's been his entire career. He looks rather inconsistent these last couple of weeks, and he's crashing more than I've ever seen him crash. He's had big crashes in his career, no doubt, but like back-to-back weekends of just like really weird big mistakes like he's had is so uncharacteristic of Antonio that, man, I fear that the momentum switch has really affected him in a big negative way here. You know, it's good to see that he's able to turn around in the second moto, still get a fourth, and come around. But when Tim Geiser goes 1-1, I mean, you got to do better than fourth. You got to do better than 12th. You got to do better than 17th. And those have been his last 3 moto scores. So suddenly, what was a big old championship lead and seemed like a pretty simple, you know, kind of cruise it down the stretch kind of championship for Cairoli is anything but. Geiser now has a 13-point lead in the championship after he went 1-1 this weekend. Rode fabulous, by the way. I mean, no question he was one of the class of the fields. I would, you know, say give a quick nod to Arnaud Tonis there in the second race, who probably had a shot at getting him for the lead, but crashed and kind of coughed up that opportunity, unfortunately. But Geiser was solid. I mean, didn't get the start in either moto. Second moto was a better start. Excuse me. But, you know, even that first moto, he had to come through quite a few people to get to the lead and made do with it and looked awfully solid getting there and pulling away out front, and just basically took the same thing and approach into the second moto. Just had Tonis on him a little bit more, you know, quickly in that second race to give him a fight. But once Tonis went down, Geiser kind of cruised it. And kudos to him. He is taking like full advantage of these Cairoli mistakes. You know, Geiser's had quite a few up and down weekends this year already, and if Cairoli was having these bad weekends while Tim was also having some bad races, you know, it would almost look kind of okay, I guess, for Antonio, like not end of the world because suddenly Tim is back in the lead. You know, he would still look kind of, you know, not as invincible either, but suddenly Geiser looks maybe more consistent than I've ever seen him in his career. He looks fast, and Cairoli is completely falking this thing up. So I don't know what the heck is going on, but this is such a weird change in momentum that I was honestly not expecting. Obviously, had a couple people tell me, well, Tim's still there, he could come at any time, and I get it, you know, like it's racing, that's why they dropped the gate, but I was pretty confident Cairoli, with that big of a championship lead, wouldn't cough it up, let alone cough it up this fast. That has been a weird shift in the series. Give a shout to the Swiss duo of Arnaud Tonis and Jeremy Seewer, who made it a 2-3 Swiss podium behind Geiser there. Great riding from Tonis lately. I mean, the dude looks on it. You could say that he maybe had a shot at winning that second race besides that crash, but like he's just been fast week in and week out for the last 3 or 4 GPs, and that's a good sign to see, because Tonis has always had kind of this, you know, really cutting edge speed in his program, but the consistency has been real tough for him. Lots of crashing over his career. Of course, American fans will remember how up and down his seasons were with Pro Circuit Kawasaki over here. So now to finally get the ball rolling on a consistent level is really good to see. And man, I really thought he was going to win that second race, but he'll have another shot at him for sure this year. And seems like he's getting pretty good starts, so that's obviously going to help his case if he wants to get a moto win or perhaps a GP overall win. And then Jeremy Seewer, not only for the first time in his 450 career finished third in a moto, but he also for the first time in his career ended up on the podium in the 450 class. As mentioned, makes that a Swiss 2-3, so that's really cool for Switzerland as a nation to see their guys up there and consistently fighting for you know, race wins and podiums and stuff like that. Those guys have been crushing it this year, and like I said, just really good to see. Behind them, as I said, it was Hurlings who finished up in fourth, and then Roman Fevre, who actually finished third in the first moto, had a crash in the second moto, ended up a ways back and had to charge forward, so he ended up fifth overall. But good to see that, you know, he's kind of jumped right back in and been okay, unlike we've seen from Hurlings. Well, I mean, I guess Hurlings has been okay too, but, you know, Fevre won the qualifying race. He's been consistently one of the fastest guys on the track. He just seems to keep hitting the dirt a little bit too much and not getting starts when he needs to. I sense a victory is coming for the 2016 World Champ before long. Excuse me. So we'll keep an eye out for that. And then obviously see the dynamic between Cairoli and and guys are moving forward. Quick couple more shout outs. Just wanted to give a get well soon to Evgeny Bobrishev, Alessandro Lupino, and Clement Desalle, who all had big crashes this weekend. Gautier Paulin even had a big crash, but he was able to get going and seemed like he made a decently full recovery. But yeah, Lupino got seemingly kind of the most messed up. Pretty big crash, fractured a vertebra and his sternum. He was in intensive care on Monday, but it sounds like they're going to be able to transport him back to Italy to get surgery done and stuff like that pretty soon. So hopefully everything's okay with that. It sounds like nothing was done to his nervous system. He has full mobility and stuff like that. So nothing necessarily massively life-threatening, I guess. They're just keeping him in the ICU to make sure that the neurological damage that could have been done stays down and the swelling doesn't get to his spinal cord or anything like that. So hopefully he's going to be okay. Desalle had a humongous crash that actually everybody could have seen on TV if they were watching. Got a big old kick at the end of the pit straightaway after this finish line jump and just augured in over the bars on the little anthill at the top of the hill here. So just carrying a bunch of speed down here, was behind Hurlings battling him, and then just right over the bars right here. And just bam-o, big old crash, broke his tib fib, and that will probably be the end of his 2019 because he's going to have to go back to Belgium, get surgery, and, obviously on some level he should make a full recovery, but I doubt we'll see him back at all this year. If we do, it may not be until very late and only in getting prepared for donations, but I don't know, that's 4 or 5 months. I mean, I guess if he gets a rod in, it could heal quick, but we'll see. And then Evgeny Bobrishev also had a big crash in the first race. I think it was on this jump or one of these jumps in the back, and broke his tibia as well. Now, he was already expecting to miss some time. He had a lot of problems with his wrist and was going to sit out a couple GPs coming up to get his wrist fixed, going to get some surgery on it while he was still in Russia. So this just kind of adds to the timetable of him being out, obviously, with a tibia fracture, kind of like Desalle. It's going to take some time to heal. Need to get that bone structure completely solid so that he can get back onto weight bearing and then eventually back on the bike, but I'm sure he'll miss a couple months of time here, and that's a shame to see because Evgeny's a really fast dude, and it seems like he's hurt all too often these days, so that is a bit of a bummer for him. So that was the MXGP class. Let's talk about the MX2 class, which honestly there isn't a whole heck of a lot to talk about. I mean, Jorge Prado is starting to make this thing a bit of a snoozer again. We get a little bit of excitement out of Iago Geerts every now and then. We get excitement out of Thomas Kjær Olsen, but every week Jorge Prado is kind of the man to beat, and showed it again this past weekend. Did not get a very good start in the first race, but still walked through everybody to win. And then second race, got the whole shot, checked out, was out of there, and yeah, 1-1 performance. I mean, what more can you say? This guy is probably on his way to winning another world title. It's going to force him out of the class, so that's a lot of talking points that are going around right now. Does he end up going to the USA? Does he stay and go to 450s? Nobody has a clear answer. Recent interviews did suggest that he's pretty happy with the Decarli KTM team and would want to go to MXGP with them, but he would only be just past 18 going on 19 and moving up to the GP class, which it's happened. Geyser did it, but I don't know. Prado seems like he could still use a little bit of development to me, and obviously for my sake, I'd love to see him come stateside. He was pretty good in Supercross when he came over here and tested with TLD KTM back in 2016. That's obviously where he would likely end up if he came over in 2020, but that is going to remain to be seen. But back on the GP here for a moment. Good to see TKO, Thomas Kjær Olsen, kind of get back into a normal TKO kind of weekend. Led a lot of the first moto and probably could have won it, but a couple, late race mistakes and some fatigue, it seemed, almost caught him up, and Prado was able to get by him late. But yeah, 2-2 performance. That's kind of what we've been expecting to have him do all season long. And if he was doing 2-2 performances since Prado came back from his shoulder injury, he may still have the championship lead. It's only a 16-point gap right now, I think. And Prado just took it over a couple GPs ago. So Olsen's kind of at this point in a little bit of damage control, hoping for more mistakes out of Prado so that he can perhaps regain the red plate. But now that we're coming to the halfway point of the season, I think Prado is going to start settling into a groove of pretty consistent wins here like we were seeing. And I have a tough time believing it's going to swing another way. But again, I thought the same thing about Cairoli, and Geyser has just completely proved us all wrong, or proved me wrong here. So who knows? Maybe, maybe the tides will turn once again and Olsen will be able to beat Prado straight up. 3-3 performance for Yago Geertz. That seems like it's going to just be the standard for the 193 Keme Yamaha rider. He is looking pretty solid these days, I'll tell you that much. Pretty quiet rides, both motos, I would say. Like, he really didn't stick out to me, I would say, as like someone that was up there given a hefty fight or anything. Like, he was just in the mix. And 3-3 obviously shows that he had a good day, but I think that from his side, after winning a race in France a couple weeks ago, he'll want to become consistently, potential to race, win races and win GPs and stuff like that. And I'm sure that's coming. He still is developing. He's still pretty young, and it's good to see that he has established himself at least back-to-back GPs as a consistent front runner. Couple podiums, back-to-back GPs really does a lot of wonders for a rider's confidence, and I see him taking this into the future GPs in his attempt to start winning races, as I said. So good for Geertz. Tom Vial was 4th, and Michele Chervelin was 5th overall. Nothing really stood out of either one of those guys. Probably the biggest news there is Vial signed a 2-year extension with Red Bull KTM. So if Prado is going to be forced out of the class if he wins the world title this year, Vial is clearly now the man that they're going to go with moving forward. They'll obviously need to pick up a second rider eventually, but right now they are going to hinge all their bets with Vial as being their world championship guy once Prado moves up, and a 2-year deal kind of emphasizes that, I would say. I think one final thought I want to add into this video is good to see Darian Sinai kind of, getting over this Epstein-Barr virus. I'll talk a little bit about it in my sim video for the High Point upcoming national. But, Thomas Covington was just diagnosed with Epstein-Barr, and we've seen how long it has negatively affected Darian Sinai here. I mean, he went deep into the season now with not really getting anything going, still struggling with fitness, and now he's able to actually lead for quite a bit of that first moto. He led about 15 minutes before getting passed on lap 7 by Olsen, and seems like he is coming back to his old self, which is awesome because he's going to be out of the class next year. Sounds like he may have a deal to move up with Dixon Kawasaki onto a 450 in the MXGP series. But either way, it would be really nice to see him pick up a GP victory before the season is out. He's a guy that has worked really, really hard to make his career work in Europe, and to get Epstein-Barr before this season is maybe the worst timing ever. He was going to be a world championship contender this year. Clearly, he has the speed to run up front and potentially win races. It's just a matter of time with this Epstein-Barr thing, and clearly now that we've seen with Covington, it is going to be a big detriment for Covington going forward, and that is kind of terrible news to hear for him. Either way, like I said, glad to see Sinai get back into his groove a little bit, and look forward to seeing what he's doing as we move into the second half of the GP season. But that's a wrap here on the MXGP of Russia from Orleanic. A little bit of gameplay action here in MXGP Pro. Never even got a lap time because I spent so much time off the track or crashing. What else is new? That is just my standard gameplay abilities these days. But I want to thank you guys so much for watching again. Really appreciate everybody that stops by and watches these videos. Please open the discussion in the comment section below. Would love to hear you guys' thoughts and opinions on the MXGP of Russia, where the GP series stands with the MXGP and MX2 classes, and maybe who your guys' picks are in the upcoming GPs that we have. I think Latvia is going to be next, so who do you think is going to win Latvia? Let me know in the comment section below. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next one. So long for now.